Hi, this is Celeste, your canary in the coal mine. Today I wanted to talk to you about longevity, about how long do we live. There's a very common misconception that people 100 or 200 years ago lived very short lives, that they died in their 40s. And that just isn't true. That's a manipulation of the facts based on arithmetic. So let me just talk a little bit about this, because you need to understand when somebody says, oh, well, people didn't get cancer in the old days because they didn't live that long. That's just not true. Some of the people lived just as long as we live today, and they died of many of the same diseases that happen today. What pulls the numbers down is all the infant mortality and all the diseases that came through and wiped out young children. So let me just give you a few numbers here. I looked it up. Of the 7 founding fathers of the United States, George Washington died at age 67 of a severe throat infection and being bled, since one of the common treatments for diseases in those days was to bleed people. They removed over 40% of his blood, and that probably is what did him in. John Adams, the second president, died at age 91 of congestive heart failure. Thomas Jefferson died at age 83. I wasn't able to find out clearly what he died of. It said he had been in declining health for about 6 years, and he had rheumatism, which is rheumatoid arthritis. And he may have had prostate cancer. And then James Madison died at age 85 of heart failure. James Monroe died at age 73 of tuberculosis, something that we can deal with nowadays. Alexander Hamilton was the young guy. He died at age 49, which is this supposedly mythical age that everybody died at in the old days. He died of a gunshot wound. He was in a duel with Aaron Burr, so who knows how long he would have lived. Ben Franklin lived to age 84 and died of pleurisy. So if you take the average of our 7 founding fathers and ask how long did they live, on average they lived to 76 years of age. And if you delete Hamilton because he died in a duel, they lived to over 80. So that's not uncommon. That's, I'm a genealogist as a hobby, and I see old people in the records all the time. But I also see children dying at age, 6 months or 2 months or a year or whatever. Or let's look at Abraham Lincoln's children. He had 4 children. William died at age 11 of typhoid fever. Robert died, he lived a full life. He died at 82 of a cerebral hemorrhage. Edward died at age 3, probably, pulmonary tuberculosis is what they suspect from the symptoms. And Thomas died at age 18 of pneumonia. So that's a pretty typical family back in those days. 4 kids, 2 of them lived to adulthood, although one just barely. 2 of them died in childhood. That's actually the same story as my mother's family. There were 7 or 8 children, not quite sure about that last one. Or actually it was the first one I'm not quite sure about. I haven't found the birth certificate yet. And only half of them lived into adulthood. My mother and 3 of her brothers lived into adulthood. And the rest of the other 3 children, possibly 4 children, died before the age of 2 from diphtheria, from gastroenteritis, from pneumonia. Many of which we can deal with today. So in my mother's family, you could make a completely accurate statement that the average lifespan of those people was 46 years old. But my mother's 91, and her brothers lived into their 70s. So do you see what I'm saying? It's like when people say, oh, they couldn't have these diseases because they didn't live that long. That's just not true. Plenty of people lived a long life, but a lot of people died in infancy or the first couple years of their life, and that's what pulls the numbers down. But did you hear? I'm talking about basically the same diseases as we die of today, with the exception of maybe tuberculosis and stuff, which we now have antibiotics that we can treat. So that's what I wanted to talk about, is this fallacy that people didn't live long lives in the old days. They did. Plenty of people lived long lives, and they could easily come down with the same diseases we have nowadays. But the statistics show they didn't come down with some of the things like cancer at as much of a rate as we come down with today. So you got to ask yourself the question, what are we doing today that's different than a couple hundred years ago? People were out in the sun all the time. They were farmers and stuff. They weren't all dying of skin cancer. They weren't all dying of colon cancer and stuff. So, like, what are we doing different today? That's what you've got to ask yourself. And how can I make sure that I don't end up with those same conditions? So that's another little health tip for today. And I want you all to get well and stay well. Thanks.